Welcome back to the Behind the Well show. I'm your host, Roger Abel, here with Elias again. What's happening, buddy?
Oh, not a lot. Had a really good weekend, and I got a new toy. So I have a new smoker. It's a vertical drum smoker, so I made some ribs this weekend, and those turned out great.
Are you
just
gonna,
awesome.
You going to give Willie Q's a run over there at the Blue Lagoon parking lot?
I probably could.
I don't know, man.
No, he runs a really good business, and he has great. I guarantee he has a lot more experience than I do.
He's a local celebrity. I went there Saturday. I came to the office and I worked for a little bit Saturday morning. I was driving back, and I didn't have anything going on. I didn't really want to cook, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna go get a rack of ribs. You know, all good intentions of eating like a couple for lunch, and then saving the rest for dinner.
And you ate the whole rack or just half?
Well, no, I ate the whole thing. So I went, but I pulled in, and here's what I thought was really cool. So when I first started going there, like a year ago, maybe before derecho, and he had like one or two smokers. He had like 8 big giant smokers lined up in that parking lot. Like they're cranking out some serious eats over there. So I rolled in at 11 o'clock. I got a rack of ribs. I polished it off all except for one bone. I left one for later, and proceeded to take about a 2-hour nap, and I was lazy kind of all day, but that's how my Sunday went. So I appreciate your barbecue skills, so I'm going to have a competition between your ribs and Willie's over there.
Yeah, I'll bring some in so you can try them. I'm not. What's that?
Did you get that cookbook that I recommended you get?
No, I haven't. I follow a couple guys on YouTube, so that's where I go for recipes and tips. And right now I'm trying to simplify my process.
I love simplification of the process. I ran into a friend of mine the other day, and he goes, I thought you were simplifying your life. I go, nah, it seems like it gets more complicated every day.
Why is that? Because we're doing the show now?
Yeah, just,
stuff.
It seems like we're doing more and more stuff. He's like, man, you're just busy, and you got a lot of stuff going on. I said, the funny thing is I'm trying to simplify, the way I do things.
We're efficient, though.
We are efficient. Going. You're right. So, what's funny? What your barbecue makes me think about is Hawkeye football kind of coming up in the fall. I mean, what a whole year with no tailgating, no like fun outdoor stuff. So I can literally smell your smoker outside of Kinnick Stadium right now, getting ready for a game. But it actually brings up just, I think, a Hawkeye football. And I watched KCRG the other night in ESPN. Luka Garza was actually featured on there. And I don't know if the listeners remember, but it would have been, I don't know, maybe a month ago, back in April, when we talked about how Luka Garza launched a non-fungible token or an NFT. And it's kind of a trend that's happening or has happened in the past. I haven't followed that closely recently. But he launched this NFT that auctioned off for $41,000. And for those who don't know, a non-fungible token is basically the name, image, and likeness of somebody. And they're selling this digital imprint of themselves or a play or, whatever it could be, right, that you could basically have a token of. But anyway, he sold this non-fungible token for $41,000, and he donated the proceeds to the University of Iowa Stead Family Children's Hospital. So we thought that was super cool. And he's kind of the first college guy to do it. And if you think back on over the last 2 years, there's been a lot of controversy in college athletics in particular about players getting paid. Mm-hmm. And I know you play college sports. You have family members who played college sports. And, I have opinions on this, but it seems like this landscape around players getting paid is changing. And I looked it up. There was an article out there on ESPN, and it looks like 13 states have now said in some form or another they have legislation ready to go into place that lets college players basically monetize their name, image, and likeness.
Yeah, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I personally believe they should be able to, especially for the players, the young kids that are playing at Division I programs, and especially for football and basketball. The millions and millions of dollars that the colleges make and then that the NCAA makes, and how many star players have there? Because not everyone ends up being an NFL football player. Well, you could have a great career at like University of Iowa, and on a Saturday, there's 15,000 jerseys with your number in the bleachers, but then you never become like a professional football player and weren't able to really like capitalize on those skills. But the school certainly did.
Brad
the
Banks.
NCAA certainly did.
Brad Banks.
Yeah.
Heisman runner-up, wasn't he? I'm not sure he played a down in the NFL.
Yeah, he might have been. I think he did play some professional, like I don't remember what league. But, yeah, when Brad Banks was playing quarterback at Iowa, how many kids had a number? Was he number 7? I don't remember his number.
You're right.
I think he might have been how many kids had a number 7 Brad Banks jersey?
Stanzi. Like, the list goes on and on of these guys who weren't able to, per se monetize this. And I agree with you. I know the argument is, hey, we're giving them a college scholarship. Well, the question is that equitable, right? Like, oh, great, you're giving them a college scholarship that maybe they could have got on their own, right, with an academic scholarship. A lot of these guys are really smart. Well, what's equitable? I mean, why? You think about college football, it's one of the only places they say, wait, you can't get paid for what you do. You only can get paid in the form of a scholarship. It seems to me like really it's a revenue grab for the NCAA and these colleges. Should they be able to profit on the logo of the Hawkeyes? No. But their name, their picture, and their likeness, they should have some right to it. But I think where all this is going is, number one, there's legislation going towards allowing the players to do this. But what's really cool about Luka Garza is he's taking it to the next level.
Yeah, he really is.
Luka launched just recently a website called Luka Garza NFTgroup.io. And basically what it is it's a way for college athletes to go monetize their name, image, and likeness through a non-fungible token. And you go back, the very first thing on here, it says monetize your NIL, which is name, image, and likeness. Take back your power. The time is now for collegiate athletes to monetize their name, image, and likeness, and the Luka Garza NFT group is leading the way. So I just think this is really cool. This is revolutionary. It's never been done before. My guess is at some level, and I don't know this for sure, but somebody's going to question this. Right, the NCAA is going to say, well, wait a minute, are we going to let you do this? And I don't know where this is going, but I think we're a Hawkeye fan. We follow Luka Garza. He's one of the hardest playing players. I think it's cool that he's taken the next level to kind of give power back to these players.
Well, and I think he's a very good, if I was a college athlete, I think I'd be really excited about him starting this website and kind of to take the lead, because he is he's a nationally known player. And everyone knows good work ethic, good, hard, fundamental basketball player. But not only that, he's also very well spoken and a very smart person. So to me, I think he's a really good person to help lead this, for younger people. And it's college athletics. It's a big money grab for a lot of people. So some of the families that have the kids participating, they should be able to participate in some of that too.
Yeah,
and maybe not just, and probably something else that I have to get figured out, because there are programs that have the same time requirements of the athletes, but they don't have, like the football program at Iowa makes way more money than all the other programs. So there's probably going to have to be some level of sharing in that as well if this continues to go the way it's going.
Well, I mean, that's how it already is, right? All those programs are the football program sharing money with all the other programs to help keep those afloat.
Right. I would just think if you're going to start paying college athletes, which I guess this is maybe more allowing them to make money off of themselves.
I don't know. I think it's interesting, but here's what's cool about it too. Luka Garza, what he's doing is really similar to our industry. And if you think about this, Elias, what he's doing is saying, hey, Mr. College Athlete, maybe you don't have the time, the desire, and the knowledge to go build your NFT, but I do.
You can join the Luka Garza NFT group.
Right. So you think about what we do. We help people. We become their time, their desire, and knowledge for their financial life. So I just look at the parallel there, but I think it's really cool. It's cool for Luka Garza. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. I mean, obviously, Luka's going to declare for the NBA draft. I don't know where he'll get drafted, if it's high, it's low. But I think this is really cool that he's embracing this and trying to help other college athletes monetize, their name, image, and likeness.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really great, and I think he's a great person to lead the charge on that. And that's, this is kind of a good tie-in. We're talking about NFTs, and that's kind of some new technology that people are starting to adapt more. And it's in the blockchain family, which, Bitcoin's been in the news recently. We've had a big sell-off in Bitcoin. And then something that caught our attention is there's actually there's a survey group and there's some technology and financial services firms that are looking at ways to incorporate Bitcoin into life insurance contracts. So do you want to open with some thoughts on that and kind of how that's going to work?
So I'm not sure who's doing it. This is just an article that I found. But just think about what life insurance is designed to do. And I guess there's probably a couple ways they could incorporate this. But one, life insurance is designed for you to pay a premium and you receive a death benefit at some point in time. That's just the standard basics of like a term life insurance policy. My guess is what's going to happen is over time, life insurance carriers in the United States have developed new and kind of innovative ways to provide a death benefit while providing some level of investment or liquidity inside of that life insurance. That could be a whole life policy, a universal life, variable universal life, a fixed indexed life. And we're not here to give our opinion on what it is. But what I'm guessing, or what I should say what I've inferred, is that they're probably going to have an investment portion or investment option. That's Bitcoin versus a fixed rate or a variable rate inside of that contract. I would think that would be very, very volatile. And I'm not sure what kind of guarantees the company is going to put behind it from a death benefit standpoint. Meaning, if you think about the traditional universal life policies, they weren't guaranteed, right? You had to pay a premium, and as long as you pay the cost of insurance, it would obviously continue on through the life of the policy. But the cost of insurance internally goes up in there. And what happened with a lot of these policies that were written in the early 80s, they were assuming interest rates of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12%, which at the time, that was the current interest rate environment. Well, now today, we've been stuck in basically a 20-year, very low interest rate environment for a life insurance contract. And a lot of these people are getting increase in their premiums or their policies are going to lapse. I would suspect that they're going to set up a policy that works the same way but holds Bitcoin instead of your actual, fixed account. In fact, the biggest kind of person who we found that got into this is Mass Mutual actually put $100 million into Bitcoin for its general fund. They're a 170-year-old insurance company. So to put that in perspective, you've got, one of the oldest insurance companies out there who put $100 million in. $100 million sounds like a lot, but it's actually less than 0.5% of the company's total amount of investment dollars in their general account.
Yeah, so for Mass Mutual to put $100 million into Bitcoin, that's nothing. That's like an average person saying, I'm going to put $500 into Bitcoin.
Right, and it might not even be that. It might be like $5 on a scalable level,
right.
like $5.
Right.
But if you just think about people are adapting the technology, companies are going to start to, kind of welcome the people who want to be in the Bitcoin world. We've seen larger corporations invest dollars here the last 3 or 4 months. Obviously, we don't know everybody who has, but there has been some. There's over 46 million people that already own Bitcoin. So those are adopters. I mean, you think about what's the voting population of the U.S., 330 million people? It's like 15% of the U.S. population owns Bitcoin at some level. So I think that, they're trying to get ahead of the curve, the insurance companies, because they need to keep innovating, keep selling product.
Yeah. Well, and I think we've kind of, the more we've learned about it, and I'm sure these bigger institutions, the more they learn about it, there are it seems to me there are people who are always going to own Bitcoin. And I'm not, we don't speculate and make predictions on our show about price. But I tend to, when people talk about like Bitcoin going to zero, I tend to disagree with that, just on the fact I feel like there are really people that are hardcore, and they say they're never going to sell. I just kind of believe them. I feel like they've continued to buy. They're not selling. Now I don't have any insight into so the people that really believe in Bitcoin and the price just came down a bunch, I don't know if they sold or if they kept just stuck to the course. I would imagine they stuck to the course because going into it, they knew it was a volatile, speculative asset.
Well, and as we've discussed before, the people who actually own Bitcoin, like not trading it, not speculating, but they own it. They're owning it for a different reason. Their
Right.
goal, they're planning on making money, but their goal is not to make money. Like they will if what they believe will happen works out, right? If their narrative works out. But here's what's interesting. Here's why we don't predict. We were at a dinner last night with a company who's got one of the most well-respected economists in this country. It's on CNBC all the time. He said, hey, he believes Bitcoin's going to zero. Zero. He said it might triple, but I believe it's going to zero. And then I read an article put out by Kathy Woods of ARK Innovation, ARKK. She says Bitcoin's going to 500,000. Nobody knows. It just goes back to why this really shouldn't be for any of our people listening. It's good entertainment, and you should be educated about this. In an insurance policy, it could actually be fairly risky. If you don't know what you're doing, you think, well, that's a good idea to buy my insurance policy, but I'm not sure I'd want my insurance policy linked to the volatility of Bitcoin. I mean, typically you want your insurance policy to be like the most boring thing you have.
Yeah,
that's completely the opposite.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I want it purely for the protection. That's it. It's not. I don't use that as an investment vehicle or anything like that. You know me. I'm boring. I just buy plain term life insurance, and
so I think
it's going to do what I need it to do if an unfortunate thing happens.
Yeah, people need to be educated about what this is and maybe why they shouldn't own it in their life insurance. Because I promise you, if insurance companies start offering this, agents are going to sell it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're looking for sizzle.
It's the sizzle.
It's the sizzle. And we don't want our insurance policy to sizzle. We want it to be boring. We want our insurance policy to have the tagline Elias Plaid Planner behind it for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, you don't want a nice sizzling steak for insurance. You just want a plain, boring piece of roast beef or something.
Yeah. So I got a email. So I don't know if they're a listener, if they watch us on YouTube. I don't know. But it's a pretty timely question. And he said, hey, my wife and I want to buy a house. We're 35 and are ready to be done renting. Right? Which, I mean, look around. What's going on? Everybody's buying homes. Money's cheap. It's flowing. Lending. It seems to me like the lending atmosphere is loosened up from what it was 10 years ago, right after the financial crisis.
Yeah.
In today's competitive market, we don't have enough cash for a decent down payment. A friend suggests we take a loan from our 401k, but I've always heard you shouldn't do that. What's your advice? Okay, so a couple things here that are my red flags. A friend suggested. Friends aren't experts, so I'm very happy that you're reaching out to this show. We always know when things are getting a little overheated when we start taking investment advice from the roofer or the painter or cousin Joey, Uncle Eddie. That shouldn't be. So I appreciate Eric asking us.
So this would be one of my questions. If this was in my peer group, a friend suggested, I'd probably ask, so is that when you were in the garage having a couple beers, or when did you have this conversation?
Yeah. And here, Eric, I understand why there's maybe a sense like you need to do something because people feel like things are getting away from, interest rates clicked up just a little bit. Man, it's getting more expensive. And in a competitive environment, a lot of times the buyers want some level of escrow put down immediately just in case you back out of the deal, right?
Yeah.
If you're buying a $300,000 or $400,000 place, they might want a escrow deposit of like $15,000 or $20,000 when you write the offer. So it may take you out of some deals. But here's what I think about borrowing from a 401k, and we've done shows on this before. I view that 401k as literally the bank of last resort, right? I mean, if you've got to take the loan from your 401k, I'm not sure this is the purchase for you. Because why can't we just save up a little bit extra money and get a decent down payment? Most of these lenders, they're not requiring 20% down. You can buy a house with 5% down or even less in some cases. And maybe it'd be good to have, my banker Jake on the show and talk about that with people. But when I think of borrowing from a 401k, I think of all the negatives that can happen.
Yeah. Yes. So do I. And so I'm right there with you. That's a last resort option. Personally, I'm not borrowing money from 401k to make a home purchase. To me, that's last resort. This is an emergency. My family really needs this money to keep going. And I guess kind of one of the red flags for me, reading the question, we don't have enough cash for a decent down payment. And I don't know about every market out there. I know in our local market, a lot of homes are selling over what the actual value of the home is. So in this competitive market, well, you might think you're going to borrow for your down payment. Well, now you've already decided to do that. You might actually be borrowing to make up extra cash for the value above what the appraisal comes back at, because it's such a competitive market right now.
And the bank's not going to let you borrow that, right? If
value, they're not loaning you that.
So Eric, if you buy a house that's listed at $300 and you pay $330 and the appraisal's $300, the bank is not going to make that loan based upon $330. You're going to have to come up with that $30,000 of difference when you do the closing. So, but let me tell you the rationale versus just my opinion of why I don't believe taking it from the 401k is the right spot. So the first question I'd ask Eric is, how long are you going to work at this job? And the appropriate answer should be, I don't know. Because he doesn't know how long his employer is going to keep him there. He doesn't know if he's going to get sick or injured. And here's what happens. You take a 401k loan today, you lose your job. When do you have to pay it back by?
Like immediately, right?
Yeah, by the end, basically by the end of the year, you need to pay back that 401k loan. So if you went and took $50,000 out, you lost your job. Well, you got a few months to pay it back. And if you don't, it becomes taxable at your ordinary income tax rate plus a penalty. Okay. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is you're cutting off one of your branches of your growth tree, let's call it. You take $50,000 out, you lose all the compound interest on that money that could have generated. And if I look at most 401ks versus, a 2.5% interest rate, most of the time, the 401ks vastly outperformed the 401k, or the 401ks vastly outperformed that loan or whatever you took. So the only advantage there's really only two advantages of taking the loan. One, it's going to help you, potentially bypass like some credit checks and stuff, right? If your debt to income's too high, it could lower that because you're going to lower your payment, but it's not going to show up in your credit report. And the other thing is, technically, you're kind of paying the interest back to yourself versus to a bank, but neither one of those are reasons that I would be taking a 401k loan. I think that 401k loan is strictly set there for the consumer. So if you buy this house and then you lose your job, you can keep making the payments until you get back on your feet. That's when I would use a 401k loan. Like, oh my gosh, we literally can't get money anywhere.
And if you don't, emergency.
And if you can't save up 5 or 10% for a down payment, you're not ready to buy a house.
Yeah, that's kind of like the cold facts of it, right?
Yeah,
like you're just not ready. You're not there.
You're not ready because 5%. You buy a $200,000 house is $10,000. I mean, literally, if you save $1,000 a month for 10 months, you're there.
Yeah, right.
And don't get excited because someone tells you shouldn't rent. You don't know if it's a good time to rent or not. It may be the worst time to buy a house. Think about the people who said, man, housing market's super, super hot. It's 2007. I better stop renting. And they lived in Arizona. And they bought a house. And guess what happened to their value in about 18 months?
Yeah.
Cut in half.
Yeah.
So don't get excited. Yeah. Take emotion out of this like we always talk about. The more we remove emotion from all of this stuff, the better off we're going to be. And I think, here's some things that Eric can think about when he's actually going to figure out how much can he afford for the house. The first thing the bank is going to look at is what's your debt to income ratio, right? So they take whatever your gross pay is per month. So let's say it's $5,000, and about the max they're going to lend is 43%. So on $5,000 means your total debt has to be, roughly $22,000, let's call it, a month or less. So that's how the first thing, can you afford it? Second thing, what we like to think about, can you afford it? If I look at all of my household expenditures, right, my household cost, I really don't think your mortgage payment, your gas, utility should be more than 28% of what your gross income is. So that's about half, not quite half, 2/3 of what the bank would lend you. But remember, what the bank says you can afford and what you really can afford are two different things.
Yeah, those are different things.
We hear the comment, don't be house poor. House poor is borrowing 43% because that means all the rest of your income is going to nothing. Like, you're living on rice and beans, and not because you want to, because you're forced to.
Yeah, you're right. And then, and good luck pursuing your hobbies at that point if you're that strapped for cash. No golfing and no barbecuing for Eli if I do that.
I'll never forget the first house I bought. We built a new house, Skogman Homes here in town. And my realtor's comment is, maybe you're going to have to eat more macaroni and cheese and hot dogs versus steaks for dinner. I'm like, that sounds like a horrible idea. I mean, I'm an adult. I don't want macaroni and cheese and hot dogs. And my wife's like, are you serious? I'm like, I'm not eating macaroni and cheese and hot dogs. But that was his whole point was, well, yeah, you can have a nicer house, but if you do that, you're going to have to.
Right, you're going to have to cut back in other areas.
Money isn't unlimited for most people. For most people, there's some threshold of what they can afford to spend each month on all of these different things. For those people who kind of think that you're missing out by not getting in the housing market, we don't know if it's a good time or not. Don't get excited. Just make sure you do things right. Have a good down payment. Find a good banker to get you a good interest rate. Don't get crazy, right? It's hard to not kind of buy into the energy of, oh my gosh, it's going up. I have to have this. If you don't have it for 6 months, you'll be okay. I'm not that great at that. I like instant gratification, and I've had to wait for things in my life, and we all can do it. So with that said, I think this is cool stuff happening. I think the Luka Garza NFT is really cool. So if anybody hasn't checked it out, you can check out his website on that. And if anybody's looking for help financially with getting a financial plan, or they just need a second opinion on what they're doing, you can get us at btwellshow.com.